Hey, welcome everybody. This is John Paul Mendoza, Dr. Speed Selling. This is the Raging Verbalist. This is number 92. 92 for those of you who are counting. That means even if you have taken off your socks and your shoes, you need some more digits to count to 92, unless you know finger math. But that's another story. With me, as always, is the ever lovely Sandra. Sandra, for those of you who don't know, stands in your place. She asks me the questions, tough or otherwise, and we go back and forth. Now, we kind of avoid politics to a certain extent, but we don't avoid all the topics. And of course, do I have an opinion? I have an opinion about everything. So that's what the Raging Verbal is all about. So, Sandra, welcome.
Hello, hello. How are you?
I am doing fine. I mean, I know that we've got some excitement brewing on this one. So, we're talking about one of my favorite things. So, Sandra, kick it off.
Yes. So we're talking about time. With that, it's hard to believe that August is almost over. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, August is almost over. And for those of you who are not good at math, when August is finished and wrapped up, that means 2/3 of the year is done over history in the rearview mirror, and you have to move on. And I always like to keep track of time because time is what your life is all about. So today we're going to be talking about my favorite topic, or one of my favorite topics, which is time and what time looks like and what time is all about. So to me, whenever I see that time is moving on, how do you make sure you get the most things done? Hopefully by the end of this, you'll actually get some good insights and you can actually see time a little bit differently than before. And what it means to me is that we better get on with some things. I can tell you, I was talking to did a couple interviews this week. I talked to some people, and it's like how many people are just oblivious that we are almost 2/3 of the way through with the year of 2021.
All right. So, why should anyone care about that?
Well, I think the most important thing about time and why you should care about it is that when somebody says, I want to achieve more, I want to be more successful, or I just want to go out and do more things in life, you have to decide what's important. And if you have low time awareness, and I know people who have that, in fact, I have clients who have low time awareness, is that what you'll discover by low time awareness is that you don't seize opportunities, you don't get things done, and you don't experience a lot of things. Now, I kind of travel in a way that most people won't. So I'm not advocating that everybody travel like I do, which is to try to jam, 12 pounds into a 5-pound bag. And, Sandra understands that from her days of growing up in the farm because she knows what we're trying to jam into that little bag. But I can tell you that I think it's very important to be time aware because that way you don't let a precious day slip by. Because today, for all of you who are listening to this, whenever you're listening to this, today is that day that you have, and that's it. So you got to make sure that you're making the most of it, because if you don't, well, it's on you. You're responsible for how you spend your time and what you do. And here's the other really interesting kind of mindset shift that you might want to have. And that is no matter how rich, how poor, how successful, how many times you failed, everybody gets the same allocation of a single day. And that's the day that you have, which is today. Doesn't matter if you're, mega money like Bill Gates or Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, or you're, somebody who's got no money at all. It doesn't matter. Everybody gets the exact same amount of time. The question is, what do you do with that time? And that's why I think time is such an important topic. And we need to learn how to use it more effectively. And we're going to do just that.
All right. So, with that, how does someone make the most of their time?
Well, I think the way you make the most of your time is that we probably waste, some significant amount of your life goes down the drain procrastinating. And what I mean by procrastinating is, you need to do something, but you're not doing it. You're sitting there and you're looking at it, you're going, well, maybe I'll get to it a little later. Maybe I dance around it. Maybe I do something else. But what you have to do is you absolutely have to go out there and make sure that you actually get yourself in gear and get stuff done. If you don't do that, what will happen is that you are going to find out that, you're not getting the most done. So how you get the most done with your time is be very time aware. And Parkinson, guy who wrote Parkinson's Law. One of his is that work expands to fill the time allotted. Now, you can substitute work with activity. Any activity out there is going to expand to the time that you allot it. And this is where you have to become kind of saying to yourself, I want to make sure I get this stuff done, and I'm going to limit the amount of time. So that way you drive and force yourself to getting more stuff done faster and getting on with it. Getting on with it is how you get the most out of the time you have.
All right, so I do actually have a couple of random exercises that I want to get your thoughts on, and they're kind of meant to show like how little time we all actually have. So exercise 1, you take your age, multiply by 365, and that is how many days you've lived, and then the number you get, you'll subtract from 28,650, and that represents a number of days in the average American lifespan. And so that's 78.6 years old. And then the final number you get, that represents the estimated number of days left in your life.
Well, and for those, and I think it's an interesting exercise because it kind of gives you an idea of the, finality of life and what it is. And we'll add to that just a little bit, because what you can do is you can go to timeanddate.com. You can actually calculate the number of days between when you were born and today, so you can get even more accurate than what Sandra has in her algorithm. And if I do that, not counting when this is running on August the 27th, when we're doing this on the 27th. So I have lived, if you include today, when this is happening on the 27th, is I have lived 23,106 days. I don't like Sandra's number of 28,000 and change, because it sounds like I'm running out of time, which is why I'm already time crazy enough. But what I do is I think it's a great exercise to figure out how long you have been alive, and more importantly, how much time you've wasted. And I'll give you some time wasters that you can just like cut out of the list. If somebody has really irritated you, done you wrong, pissed you off, whatever, if you waste too much time thinking about them and thinking about what they did, they're robbing you of time. You're actually letting them steal time from you. So mark that off of the list. The other thing is, if you think about how you have a regret that you didn't do what, I didn't do this when I could have done it, or I did, and if you have those regrets, well, check that off the list, because that's a waste of time. You can't affect it. You can't go back and do it. I mean, hey, I can tell you, I wish I had, bought Amazon when it was, or Apple when it was $3 a share or whatever. Well, done. Can't do that. Can't go back. Let that go. So if you go out and you do that exercise and you find out, like I did, that, I've already gone 23,107 days, that's a lot of days. But now I got to think, okay, how do I utilize every single day that I have to the best of my ability? How do I make sure that I'm doing things that I want to do, things that I believe are important, things that I know are going to go in the right direction? And this is why you should take care of yourself. And more importantly, make sure you take care of the priorities in your life, which we're going to be talking about that in just a little bit, but you have to really think about it. And I really appreciate Sandra having that exercise, because that means that you have to start thinking about how many more birthdays will you have? How many more Christmases will you have? How many more holidays will you have? So if you've been putting something off, if you've been saying, no, I'm going to do that somewhere down the line, probably it's time, especially since we've gone through this whole pandemic thing, to start thinking about not shoving it off the edge. Just make sure you do it now. Make sure you figure out when you can do it now. Understand you may not be in that financial spot to do it, but I'm going to tell you, you got to start doing things today, because if you don't, then you know what? It's going to be even worse. Now, if you're in business, if you're in the idea that, I've got things I've got to get done, John, I'm really trying to build this thing, and I have the perfect thing that you can do with your time, which is you can pick up one of my 2 books, shameless plug, 2 books, so you can pick up this book. Now, why does this say most businesses fail in their first 5 minutes? It just takes them 3 to 5 years to realize it, is because I have seen this over and over and over again, where people get excited about something. They're going to be in this wonderful business, and they discover, of course, that, well, they're not going to be that successful. Oh, by the way, I got rid of it before I needed to. That's how excited I was. So go pick this up at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any place that quality books are sold. Also, you can pick it up at all the e-book formats, Kindle, Nook, Apple. And then you can get the other book, which is, I always love doing this in a mirror. It makes you crazy. Anyway, Remote Work for a Better World, still 99 cents, available exclusively on Kindle. You can also go to positiontowinbook.com. Lots of cool free stuff. Make sure if you're watching this on YouTube that you click a like, you leave a nice comment, you subscribe, you do all those things. So you do all that, and that'll be great. And that actually will help you out in focusing on these things, which is what we're going to be talking about soon. So with that, Sandra, what do we have next?
All right. So what's the first step in kind of figuring all of this out?
Well, the first step is that maybe this is step 0. So maybe I should start with step 0. Step 0 is that, you are in charge. You are the person driving your life bus. And whether you're driving your life bus and hitting the guardrails, or you're on the highway of death through the Andes Mountains, or you're in some, flat land, or you're wherever you are driving your life bus. And because of that, you're in charge of it. So that's step 0. But step 1 is you need to talk about your priorities. What are the priorities that you have in your life? And it is astonishing to me about how many people will not have prioritized their life. What is important to you? What do you want to achieve? Doesn't matter what I want to do. Doesn't matter what Sandra wants you to do. Matters what you want to do. So you have to figure out what your priorities are. And the better off you are at defining your priorities and saying, this is a top priority. And whether you have a bucket list, whether you have a goal list, whether you have a wish list, whether you have whatever that is, you need to sit there and look at it. And then more importantly, say, what are my priorities? What is going to be that number one thing that I want to do? Now you may say, but John, I can't do that now because of other reasons. Okay, keep that in mind, but then go to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Once you determine what your priorities are, once you figure out what is most important, things will become easier for you, believe it or not. You'll become actually more successful because then you'll have your priorities figured out. I mean, it took me quite some time, how about 30 years, to get a book written. But once I figured out that I actually needed to do it, it didn't take nearly as long to write the second book. And that's good. But what happened is that my priorities changed. And what I really understood is that, I'm not going to live forever. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. You're probably not going to live forever. By the way, if you are, drop us a note because we'd like to know how you're going to do it. But if you're not going to live forever, you have to decide what's important and what you need to do. And by that, you need to get to it and make it happen and start doing it. Any given day, life will intercede. Murphy will come and kick you in the head and knock you down and say, you know what? We're not going to do that today. Grumble, grumble, grumble. I'm going to tell you every day you need to figure out what your top priorities are and do those top priorities, which are life affirming and match up to what you want to do.
All right. So now that we've figured out priorities, where do we go from there? Like, what's the next step?
Well, once you have a priority and you say, this is a priority in my life, this is what I want to really do, is now you have to turn them into a goal, because priorities are actually above goals. Now, some people say goals are the end all be all. No, it's what you determine is the ordering of things. So now you want to write out a goal, but a goal has to have some level of tangibility, has to have some kind of deadline to it. Remember, we just discovered, Sandra just gave you the bad news that, some of you are closer. I'm closer than she is probably to where I'm going to start hearing, Dylan singing Knocking on Heaven's Door. So you got to decide, what are my goals? And when you start writing out goals, here's the mistake that people will make. I made it too, did it a long time, gonna save you a lot of heartache. If you write a goal that is a singular purpose goal, now I'm going to make X number of dollars, $100,000 in a year. I'm going to have $100 million business, whatever those kind of goals are. Those are fine as long as you have other multidimensional goals so you can achieve other things. Because see, goals end up having this kind of binary sense to them. And what you want to do is you want to be flexible in what they're going to be. So an example may be, I want to go out and make a bunch of money. Who doesn't, right? If you're listening to this, you probably are money motivated. However, you have to decide, what are you willing to do or not do to go out and make that money? And more importantly, what other things are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to sacrifice your family life? Are you willing to sacrifice ever going on a vacation? Are you, what are you willing to do that? So you want to make sure that you have your goals, and you want to have more than one goal. You want to have multiple goals, and the goals should cover other aspects of your life. And by having those, what you'll discover is you'll find out that your life actually takes on a bigger purpose, because you really shouldn't be doing just a goal unless it deals with your priorities and your life purpose and what you're trying to accomplish.
All right. So is there another step? What's next?
Well, the next step is once you have a goal, and I just told you to write a whole bunch of goals, and the reason for that is you got to get them out of your head. Is now you have to say, how do I focus on a singular goal, on something to get it accomplished? If you have 20 things you're trying to do, then what you'll do is you'll probably fail at 20 things, or you'll be mediocre at most of them. So what you want to do is say, okay, can I pick something that I know I can achieve and get positive feedback from that? And that requires you to be focused. And the more focused you are, the more laser focused you are in going after that one goal. After you've determined your priorities, after you've written out a bunch of goals, that's why you don't want to have just one, is that way you can actually aim for that and get to where you need to go. See, lack of focus, what that means is that I've met a lot of people who are being very active in what they're doing. They have a lot of activity, but they don't have a lot of accomplishment. We want to arrive. We want to make sure that we get to our destination. We want to make sure that we're going to the place that we need to go, and not just be a person who says, well, it doesn't really matter. I've got all these things I'm working on, but they never seem to get anywhere. Focus is key. I'll give you a simple, direct exercise. What you do, and you can use your phone. You can go buy, I like to buy a timer. What you want to do, because again, all this stuff is tied into time. Sit down for whatever amount of time you can do this. It's a challenge to sit down. If I told you sit down and focus for 2 hours on something, the likelihood of you actually focusing for 2 hours is, well, it's almost impossible. But if I told you, can I get you to focus on a singular something for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 or 25 minutes? Can I get you to focus on something for that amount of time? Eliminate distractions. No, you're not going to check and see what's going on social media. You're not going to go read your news feed. You're not going to go watch a funny cat video. You're going to focus on this. And by doing that singular task, you'll be amazed at what you get done. There's a Chinese proverb which says, and this kind of reflects the time, so don't go sending weird comments, but if a man can focus for 20 minutes on a singular thing, he can rule the kingdom. Now this was like 2,500 years ago. They were talking about having trouble focusing. Think about all the distractions that we have, and it's easy to understand why focus is like one of the most important things. Now, we could spend more time on focus, but I'm going to give you 3 concrete things you're going to need to do. Number 1 is gather all the materials you need to work on a task, because you want to know what that task is. Number 2 is set a timer, a countdown timer. And when you sit down, it doesn't matter unless something really blows up. Now, I'll tell you a funny story. I'm sitting at my bank. I'm sitting there with my business partner and the president of the bank. And again, this is a smaller bank. I like doing business with smaller banks. And this is like an under $1 billion bank, which, by the way, in the terms of banking, is a little tiny bank. And we're sitting there and we're talking to Stan, and Stan and I we're having this good conversation. We've been a good customer for years, and we're doing this. And somebody comes in and interrupts him and says, Stan, there's an issue going on. Now, Stan, who was and still is, he's still around. Stan was very much a guy who wanted to make sure that he was going to focus. He says, well, I'm talking to John, and unless the branch is being robbed, I am not, I'm not going to break away to go. And she leans over and she goes, the branch is being robbed. Ta-da! Well, guess what? We were then, he had to go, and it worked out. It was okay. But there you go. The point of it is that when you start focusing, unless your bank is being robbed, don't do anything else. So, what's number one is we bring all the stuff together that we need. Number two is that we give ourselves a countdown. And number three, so number three is that when we get to our end point, is we want to make sure that we have at least a couple of minutes to reflect on it and understand what we've accomplished, because accomplishments happen in small incremental steps. If you constantly work towards achieving a goal, if you constantly push one little bit at a time, if you constantly are moving in that direction, you will see that things happen and things will take place. Part of doing what we do, like on Raging Verbalist, this doesn't happen by magic. This happens because we put in effort, we put in energy, and we're always moving it forward. Sometimes the deadlines get close, sometimes we get them done early, but the point of it is that life is filled with all of that, which really comes down to probably the fourth item of this whole idea of focus and what that means, which is dealing with deadlines. Sandra, I know I'm looking at the clock. We have to be mindful of it as our lives are ticking away. What do we have for our final question?
All right. So how would somebody pull all of this together?
So how you pull it together is you spend some time. So what's one of the first tasks that you should do is you should have a task to kind of understand your priorities. What are your life priorities? Write all these things out. Get them out of your head. Sit there and lean over and bang them out and see what sloshes out. But make sure that you get those out. So that's the first thing you want to do. And make that one of those tasks that you go and you spend that 20, 25 minutes. The next thing is now you say, okay, what are goals? What do I really want to do? Most people will have goals that they never achieve because they never take them seriously. They never really believe in them. And when you do that, when you take them seriously, and that means maybe some things don't get done, then that allows you to then bring in that focus step. The most important thing is to give yourself adequate time, but no more. You need to have deadlines. Things have to happen by a certain time. When I first came to the idea and the concept of building a platform, and the platform would become Speed Start Monday. And for those of you who don't know what it is, you can go to positiontowinbook.com and you can find out some of the things I do. When I first started to develop this, then a teleseminar series and later a webinar, which is what it is today, what I realized is that I had gone out and talked to all of these people. I've talked to priests and rabbis and shaman and soothsayers and all of these people. And I realized that what I needed to do, because I kept looking for that easy way out, is I needed to find a way to build a process. And I'm going to share that process with you right now. And that process is that I have a whole bunch of topics in my mind. By the way, Speed Start Monday, I talk about sales at a very granular level. So if that matches up with some of the stuff you're thinking about, maybe you want to check it out. But here's how I get it done. So I have a hard deadline because I go live 50 times a year at 7 a.m. Pacific time. I go live and I basically go and we have a little bit of discussion up front, and then the iron gate drops and the clock starts and I go for 1 hour. I talk for 1 hour. Again, hey, I'm the Raging Verbalist. And what I do is I have to have a script to do that. You cannot do that maybe somebody can do it off the top of their head, but you really can't do it off the top of your head. And what I do is I have my script. Now, here's the whole intrinsic secret of this thing. When I first started doing these things, it would take me hours to get this organized and put together. And when I realized that this was a priority, this was a goal, and my goal was that I wanted to do more of these than my compadres said I would probably do. Because everybody said, yeah, you can do 10, 15, 25 of them. How about 883 and counting? And what I do is I get up every single Monday, and I usually don't need an alarm unless it's been kind of a rough period of time. And I get up and write from 4 a.m. until sometime a little before 7 a.m. Because remember, I have to go live. And by having that deadline, I have compressed the amount of time it takes to write this content that I have delivered to people all over the world. And what it means is that I know exactly what I have to do and how I have to do it. I know what I have to develop and pull together. Now, I can tell you that I've had people say to me, John, why don't you get it done the night before? Well, because I won't. Well, why don't you get it done, weeks before? Because I won't. What I am telling you is that part of pulling this together is learn from this, take a page out of my book, which is I at one time had 3 coaches who were going to help me with my speaking career, fired all of them because none of them thought this was a great idea to do this. This works for me. I don't know if it works for you, but by having that deadline, having that sword of Damocles hanging over my head and knowing that I've got to get it done. Now, it doesn't mean I don't think about it during the week. It doesn't mean I don't capture ideas during the week. I'm always capturing ideas. I'm always reading things. But what I'm going to tell you is if you really want to make the most of your time in your life, is intensely focus and have a serious deadline on a task and getting it done. Because I start at 4 a.m. and by 8:30 a.m., I am wrapped and done. And I have created yet another 70 to 90 minutes of content, another brick in the wall. Now, I don't know how many of them I'll do. I don't do a lot of repeating. I don't do any pitching. But what I can tell you happens is that, as my good friend Perry Marshall once said, John, you either have to pay somebody to listen to you, counselor, psychiatrist, psychologist, who knows, or you could actually do Speed Start Monday and get it out of your head, which is what I do. Hopefully what you'll get from that is to pull it all together, is to find your own method of doing this. And don't waste a lot of time trying to figure out the best, the most optimal, the most whatever. See, I did that a lot. I, in fact, probably delayed by almost 18 months while everybody was trying to tell me the best way to do it. You figure out the way that it works for you. Now, it doesn't mean you shouldn't get better at it. I think I have over 883 of these. I think I've gotten better at it. But I can tell you that what you need to do is to get your act together and go figure out how you can get those tasks done. Because you know what? You don't want to have this happen to you. I believe that some of the people that I've met, some of the most incredible teachers I've ever had, died with their best ideas, their best insights, and their best overall judgments inside of them, because they never actually got it out. They never captured them, and they never got it done. Hopefully what you'll do is go get it done. And hopefully what you'll have been inspired to do in this Raging Verbalist number 92 is to go out there and get on point, on task, and get it done. And as Sandra, who's brought us clearly into focus, your life is marching on. It's your task to go out and get it. And with that, I'm going to just leave you with this one final thought. The scariest thing that you can ever face is the absolute truth that you are in charge and you are driving your own bus through life. You decide who gets on the bus, you decide who gets off the bus, you decide who you kick off of the bus, but you're the one driving it. Live up to that responsibility. And hopefully what you'll do is you'll end up with the life that you deem important enough to live for. And most importantly, that you'll understand that every single day is going to be your best day ever. And every single year is going to be your best year ever. So that way, when it is all said and done, you will have done the best that you can possibly do.